This is the Internet Court of Truth and Lies. What this is about is anybody can be a plaintiff in this court if they've got something that they think is true or they think is a lie. They can dissect their claim, whether it is true or a lie, and have up to 8 jurors listen to what they say. And then the jurors all give their verdicts, answer the same questions. And there's a discussion about whether or not the claim is correct or not. This is probably the first article I wrote on Medium that was based on a book I wrote, which is right here, on the computational cognitive neuroscience. And out of that study came a fundamental realization that the classic ways that people divide up truth and lie was not exactly right in terms of the damage that could be done, and that there needed to be a sort of a class lies for which no dialogue is possible. The kind of reason for that is that the way truth and lies work among humans is dialogue is possible. So if I say something to you and it's a lie, then you can question me. I don't believe you, or is that really true? And then I can try to convince you. That's the way humans used to communicate all the time. And then in the last 2,000 or so years, and certainly with the advent of the printing press, and more recently the advent of the internet, and before that, broadcast TV and broadcast radio, people could say things for which dialogue was not possible. You no longer had one person saying things to a very large number of people where dialogue is infeasible. And there was no avenue by which anybody could have a dialogue about that within the context of the media at hand. The argument is FIAT lies as a distinct group of lies. The lies that people normally talk about have been called conversational lies. And in fact, with this court, are associated with conversational lies, how a conversational lie or truth is dissected. So the 8 questions, which is it the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, is the sort of standard legal way of deciding whether something's the truth or a lie. What's the deceit is all lies will have some form of deceit in them. Is the deceit of truth intended? All lies, or what the language is, will have an intention. What's the motivation? Typically, you can have a lie which is absolutely factually true, but it's the motivation that's the deceit. In other words, the person is telling you something that's true with a motivation to harm you or to gain some advantage for him or herself. What's the social acceptability of the truth or lie? We know that in general, the human brain is a truth engine. Lying is, generally speaking, not acceptable unless it's fanciful lying, like fiction or comedy, where lying is fun or very interesting. But generally speaking, lies thought of as completely unacceptable. But any lie can be more or less socially acceptable. What label will improve the social acceptability of the lie? This is like putting a tag on a FIAT lie that's just appeared in the media that says some truth about that lie, whether or not it is, that might help people understand or damage that lie. So it turns out that the argument being made in this particular paper is that FIAT lies are genocide on the human race. with the sort of advent of the printing press. This happened much earlier than it happened with the rulers over large domains of people, where word was distributed by the rulers, for which you couldn't question the ruler because he was a god. So it's happened for a very long time, but the amount of fiat lying and the damage it can do to very large populations of people has only grown with the advent of things like the printing press and the internet. And I actually believe that if left untethered, fiat lying can lead to somebody pushing a nuclear button and the end of the human race. The argument that's being made here is that fiat lies are genocide of the human race because you don't have the availability of dialogue that can allow you to dissect it and understand it. We've known for many years that if you know something is a lie, it will really not have an effect on you because you understand it to be a deceit, understand what the truth is, and so it's not going to have an effect. It can have an effect on you because you might believe it. And or you may believe that the motivation behind some fact was not deceitful or it was deceitful. And if you believe it was deceitful, it may not have an effect. Whereas if it was deceitful and you believe it wasn't deceitful, you could wind up in a really bad situation. So that's the argument. Another aspect of this particular paper is this notion that the human brain always processes reality, no matter what it's doing. It's always processing reality in what have variously been called units. In natural language, these units are essentially sentences, but the units can occur not only in language, where you have the units of thought. And the argument is that the way the brain works is there's basically 100 billion neurons between your ears. And for each of the neurons, there's about 3,000 synapses on average. So there are 300 trillion compute units inside your brain. And when you're looking at things like ChatGPT and generative AI, a number of these newer modern AI systems, what you're actually seeing is the computation of what are called advanced perceptrons. And you can illustrate an advanced perceptron as a predication, as a subject and a predicate, a value that will say that a proposition is true or false. And the inputs would be inputs that tell you that a certain subject has shown up and a certain predicate has shown up for that subject. And so you put the subject and predicate together, and the unit sits there and tells you that in other words, the subject and predicate are both activated, and the unit says, I have a subject and predicate that are active. We know the way this works is these predications are hierarchically organized all the way down from the retinas to sentences that you form or sentences that you understand. And a sentence can describe a small action, or a sentence can describe a whole story. This is just how the brain computes. We've known this for about 50 years. We were proving that this very simple computation engine, when you make them in the billions, you can get human understanding and human language production and human interpretation of pictures, human-like creation of pictures. We've known this for a long time. One of the things we early on proved was that this particular type of computation could do mathematics. It could do logic. It could program computers. And y'all are seeing that today with these modern AI. The ChatGPT can actually write programs. Some of the, like Grok, can actually do math for you. And all of this was understood how to do this back in the late 80s, early 90s. But we just didn't have the hardware to do it on. These proposition, the fact that the fundamental units are what are called predications, and this notion of your brain thinking in terms of propositions. Predication is really a contextualization of a subject. If you have a proposition like John runs, John is the subject, runs is the predicate. The predication of the subject is the predication on John that he's running, the contextualization of John. That's the way to think of these things and the way to think of the fundamental computation. What we're arguing in this fiat lie business is that if predication, whether it's a predication that's essentially summarizing an entire sequence of events, or a predication that is just one little event, that's what you can turn into a truth or a lie. And what's interesting is that it turns out Sabine, physicist, has just put out 3 or 4 hours ago she is trying to do computational cognitive neuroscience, and she's not one, she's not a cognitive, but she's misinterpreted, which is interesting.
A gigabyte of
data. For a second.
But quite possibly the only thing you remember is today's state of my hair. This enormous loss of data in the human brain is extremely perplexing. It's not...
Okay, so what she just said is a lie. She said this enormous forgetfulness of the brain is what's perplexing. And the truth is the brain computes all these things. It doesn't forget them. What happens is the things that it's computing are largely unconscious, and under certain circumstances can be brought to consciousness, and we can show how. For example, if you hear something and you think it's a lie, dawns on you, wait a minute, this is a lie, you're actually showing that your brain is computing a lot of other things besides simply thinking everything is the truth. Okay. And so she thinks that the brain loses this information. It's not lost the information. She just doesn't understand how the brain computes. So she takes this very shallow level. I'm going to leave this with y'all. I've sent y'all the link to this. It's worth reading. I put a comment in that actually pointed to this paper. I may have pointed to the consciousness paper that we did last week. But I don't want to go too much into this one. But it's interesting that this happened in just the last few hours that she wrote this. And she had read another paper that was by somebody like me who had done a good study, and she completely misinterpreted the study. She also completely misinterpreted what Musk is doing with Neuralink. She's a physicist that shouldn't be doing cognitive science. It's just a thing. What I want to do is I'll go over, my argument is that fiat lies, genocide on the human race. And really the only way you can fix that is what we have here, which is a means by which somebody can say something that they think is true and hear what other people think, whether it's true or not, by dissecting it as a truth or a lie. I'm going to go through my verdicts here, and then you should be filling out your verdict if you haven't already. So is it the truth? I said yes. The term genocide is really meant to refer to mass human deaths caused by humans. I'm not saying that necessarily all humans will be wiped out, but I am saying that very large numbers of humans can get wiped out. And it's a problem. We need to have some mechanism built into the internet that allows people to, if they see something that they suspect is a lie, or see something that somebody's claiming is a truth, and they want to know why it's the truth, They can ask some other people. It turns out you get a few people together, and usually people can see what the possibilities are. And then all you really have to know to make the lie, if it is a lie, a fiat lie, to make it not dangerous, is you have to see how something could be taken as that lie. And once you see how it can be taken as the lie, the damage it can do gets really limited. And it's really an amazing thing once somebody knows that something is a lie. And it's what happens when you read fiction. When you read fiction that's not true, it really doesn't bring you to treat it as if it's true. Okay. There's truth to fiction, but you figure out what that truth is, and you know that a lot of those details that are being talked about are not true. So it really doesn't have effect on you in terms of a decision-making process to do some harm to somebody because somebody has misled you. Is it the whole truth? I said no. There are certainly the vast majority of fiat lies are not going to cause people to kill each other, but some will. And I can go through examples of that, but I'll let y'all see those yourself. Is it nothing but the truth? I said no. There's certainly many. They're not genocide because they do not leave people. So there's certainly fiat lies that are not harmful. What's the deceit? The deceit is, I don't believe there is any deceit. I believe this statement is true. Is the truth intended? I said yes, because I'm the plaintiff and I did intend to be the truth. What is the motivation? And my motivation is pure and simple, to be informative based on what we understand about how human brains compute and the need for dialogue among people in order to straighten out misconceptions and other things that aren't true. What's the social acceptability of the lie or truth? I said this truth is completely acceptable. I think people need to understand there is a difference between fiat lies and conversational lies. Most of the lies that you encountered in normal day are fiat lies. They're not conversational lies. You're not sitting there with the person who lied to you and you're willing to have a conversation with them because they're open to being discovered. Okay, that's not common. Or you're not in a situation where somebody's lying to you and five other people who are sitting there, and you and five other people talk about it, and y'all realize that the guy was lying or could have been lying. The lack of a conversation at all can lead somebody down a path which can be very damaging. What I argue here is people need to understand the importance of proper human dialogue to challenge any suspected lie or supposed truth, which is what we're fixing to do right now. What I'd like to do is get each juror, and I'll call you out and ask for a 30 or 40-second summary of your verdicts in order to get your views on it. Juror one.
Hi, Robert. Okay,
Hey.
so with this case, I'm not sure if it was you that presented or Teresa, also about the fiat lies. And that's actually the first time that I read about that word. So I do agree with you that it is very dangerous and you should be careful when spreading those type of lies, because as you said, it can lead to the loss of lives and also create damage like the genocide, for example, and maybe wiping out one specific group of people just by spreading that lie.
So juror two.
Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. This is my first time, so just getting in the hang of things. This is my first introduction to the term fiat lies, which I found very interesting. And
By the way, I invented the term, so
yes,
it
I
is
gathered that
natural
from
that you've never heard the term before.
yes. So I gathered that from reading the Medium article. quite interesting. I do agree with the statement, fiat lies are genocide on the human race. Like I said, it's not completely the truth because there are fiat lies that are not as harmful as a genocide, one might argue. But I do believe that now knowing what the term means, it does exploit human biases and it may play a role in fueling violence. I like when you started off by explaining things, I like that you said that fiat lies can lead to someone pushing the nuclear button, which may in its entirety then mean clearing out the human race or a specific race, genocide. But yeah, so it is unlikely that a single lie may trigger a nuclear war per se, but eventually systematic disinformation may. And yeah, for me, the summary that I make is lies are a structural threat to human survival. So that's what I would like to end off with.
Thanks. Appreciate it. 3.
Good evening, everyone. I think I'm going to come with a slightly disagreeing take in that I do agree that, like the previous juror said, I think she put it perfectly, that it is a structural threat. I do think maybe the term or the phrase that they are a genocide to the human race might be a little bit of an extremist take. And if we do look at the whole premise of your article, you did say that natural language can distort what someone means. So I think maybe to some degree, the way in which it was approached is for me a little bit on the extreme side. However, I do understand the intention, and I would love to see what other peers or other scholars and academics would make of this new term that you've come up with.
The term fiat lie has been, when I published this paper, September the 3rd, 2019. Generally speaking, people in my world have picked up on the term and they like it because it's generally understood that it is correct, that the way your brain is structured in terms of what you know of truth and so forth and so on, you have to trust other people. If you have no ability to dialogue about something, they can really mislead you and take you down a path. If they're evil enough, they can really seriously take you down a path. Without dialogue with some other people, you stand no chance. When I first came out with this paper, I gave a talk over at CMU, Carnegie Mellon, in the School of Computer Science to about 150 people, my peers. And they had never heard the term fiat lie. And generally speaking, they liked it too. They liked the term. They thought it was a useful distinction to make among lies. So the answer is that I've not really had anybody tell me, oh, there's another term for this or anything else. They like it. They think it's appropriate. Juror 4.
Good evening. It's also my first time that I've heard about the term, but I do agree with your argument. But it's not the entire truth because there are many fiat lies that do not lead to people interact in massive killing of other people, but some do. Yeah, I do agree with it, but not entirely. Okay.
We have the same view. I mean, I think the vast majority of fiat lies are harmless, but there are that are not. So, Juror 5.
Hello.
Yes.
First of all, I do agree with your statement fully, as well as with when you said that it's not the entire truth. I do agree that lies can possibly lead, but genocide of the human race. However, I believe there's a scale to it. I think there are fiat lies on a lower level that don't really affect people, as you've also mentioned. So I think it's really more about the scalability of the actual lie and what it may lead to. So yeah, I agree with you.
Juror 8.
Hi, Robert. I also fully agree with you. From my side, I just want to highlight something as well. What happened in South Africa? There was a guy that was on social media. He pretended that he was a doctor. He even gave people advice and they follow his advice. So he went to the medical surgery site with full uniform. I don't know where he got it, but it was all lies. He went there live on social media. He was live and he went there and showed the people in hospital, doctor, and treating patients. He said also he was a patient himself who is testing positive for HIV and AIDS cure for all those viruses and stuff. So they believed him that his medication will cure them from HIV and AIDS, but it was all lies. He never had HIV and AIDS, and the treatment he sent those people, it was actually something that was poisoning them, and everyone believed him. It feels like for me, like you fall so quick for certain people's lies, and he even faked his degree. He faked his university certificates, every single thing he faked it. And he survived with it for, I think, for maybe a year or so on. It was just once where everyone was just following him, where he jumped out of the hospital and tried to escape, and they caught him. And worst of all, the lawyers was fighting for him to get out of prison and stuff. So they got it. He came out of prison and still again he denies everything on social media. He said it wasn't him. So I do believe fiat lies are genocide on the
Yeah,
human
so
race.
yeah, so the argument is that if there had been a way, there really wasn't a way in that particular situation, but if there had been a way to actually challenge him, it should have been his bosses. They should have challenged him to have some kind of dialogue to figure out whether he was lying or not. But even then, he may have gotten away with it. The average person would not probably have been able to detect this, but the people who knew about the condition of his patients, his other patients, should have been able to detect this and bring him to task. And that's a problem. And I think that if we did have the term fiat lie, so that people knew that if something's been flagged as a potential fiat lie, they should know that the dialogue is the only way out. One way I used to put this is there is no shot, there's no pill you can take. You can't give the guy a pill and he tells the truth. It just doesn't work that way. You can do things to him to force some truth out of him, possibly. Sometimes that even doesn't work. But the easiest way to do it is to engage him in dialogue directly on the subject at hand. And if you can do that's great. Or the other doctors get together and they dialogue about the guy, and then you don't do doctoring anymore because we no longer believe you. Okay.
Yes,
So
I think that was the way they caught him because he said somewhere in 2017 or 2016 he graduated. Oh, no, I lie. I think it's 2007 he graduated from university in South Africa, but he never ever had a graduation. There's no pictures. So the professor also stated the article in the newspaper and asked, can he show himself? Can he pick himself out of the graduated students in the picture? Then he couldn't because there was no picture of him at the graduation that time. And the same
yeah,
with the medical side. The doctor said that you are never there for practical and stuff, so it can't be true. But on the documentation, his name and surname and everything is there because he fraud all of those documents. But at the end of the day, they caught him.
yeah. So what you're giving is a really good example because you could do the same thing with a lot of other people in other situations where, and I'm not going to spend the time digging on those because I've basically got so I had run this trial before and I think it came out about the same way that this one came out. One juror had been, I forgot which juror it was, but was it juror one?
Yeah, juror one.
Yeah. And I think we came to the same conclusion, which is everybody agreed that it was very possible. And so it's not a terrible thing to entertain. But the thing that we really need to fight for is for people to understand that dialogue is essential. It's really the only way we know to mitigate the damage that fiat lies can do. If all you're doing is talking to yourself, you are limited by what you heard and what you've seen and what you believe, and you don't really have a way unless you can talk to somebody else and say, I'm wondering whether that's true or not. Then people that are addressing that problem directly and it lies. So that's what this paper is all about. It says we don't have the magic pill. We don't have a vaccine that we can give you that will keep you from ever lying. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. And I think that's it. I don't know if y'all know about this, but on the website, and I'll try to bring this up, if you go to this case and you click on, let's see if I can bring it up here. So you should have fiat lies in a few minutes. It'll be settled. And it what I've done, and you could the Zoom meetings for all the cases that I've done in the last 43 cases, probably 41 or 40 cases that I've done. You could see some of the past cases and so forth and so on. This has only been on the site for about 2 weeks. So the ability to go see cases by other people is new. There's a second type sponsor, which are all the other cases that have had other plaintiffs on them. And here we have 561 cases, and you can view the cases that have been done in the past. So we'll see y'all, and I really appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.